So these are the main grids that we're currently using for our electricity, and the infrastructure needed for this power to move from here to these substations then to our homes is really costly. And the fault in these can affect everyone. Doesn't matter where you are. So the loss of power here means no electricity or blackouts in multiple places from these people, and it can take days for them to be able to fix this. So you can even imagine how much power they're losing, right? So this is when there was a blackout in Manhattan, and you don't want to be all of these people, but you want to be these people, the University of New York, right? So places like this and the electricity infrastructure that we're using right now makes me think maybe electricity and the internet should be localized. This paper suggests that if the public owns the roads and all of the infrastructure for transportation, why not the infrastructure for internet? Since cable fibers are to what copper was during the last century. I'll add electricity to this statement since electricity and the internet are exclusively connected. So the taking over of both means that the community doesn't have to sacrifice one by not having control of the other. I'll be sharing a few case studies of towns or communities that actually took over of one and how it affected them in the long run, and what I think will be the future of taking over of both and the solutions that we'll need. It doesn't matter where you are, these solutions will apply to you too. As we figure out ways to generate more electricity and we avoid blackouts, we should look towards new solutions. Maybe not that new per se, because this type of technology that I'm going to talk about is from the 90s, right? Let's look back to New York City University, right? They are using like a microgrid system to power the campuses, so if anything happens to the main grid, it doesn't affect like their own microgrid since it's independent from the main grid. So what's a microgrid? I think maybe I'll talk about this some more as like this video proceeds. But a microgrid, I'll read the direct quotation from a paper I read from the University of Milwaukee, right? A microgrid is a localized group of electricity sources and loads that are normally operated and connected and act as a single controllable unit. These multiple sources of electricity are in synchronicity, right? So these multiple sources of electricity are synchronized with the traditional centralized grid that we're normally using, right? But they can disconnect and function automatically or autonomously. It's determined by the state of the economical state or the physical state that it's in. This ability to detach from the main grid is what drew me in with this type of system, since we see the problems that we have with the current system that we're using, right? These are the few power industry problems that we have right now: the rising energy cost, the power quality, stability, aging infrastructure, mass electrification, and climate dynamics, right? These are the problems that we've had since the 1990s. That's why the scientists really proposed this type of system to use, and it has been used by private sectors. We'll see a chart soon about these industries that have been using microgrids. With all these problems that arise from the current system that we're using, they can be overcome by using low voltage distribution generation, where all these sources and loads are collected. These are the forecast for the microgrids usage or application market in 2022 by the University of Milwaukee. This was like 2016, so this paper is like out of date, but we can use the chart to see where they thought it will be in 2022. As you can see, the application market, and this is for the growth where they thought other markets will be during this time in 2022. This is the growth of microgrid revenue, how much money is going to be spent or received by these companies that produce microgrids. I don't think we're anywhere close to these numbers have predicted, right? Like, we're far from it. And if you want like a more technical explainer, comment and sub to the channel. We'll be doing a long video with specialists. The same article actually proposed features that we need to have these grids function the way that we want them to. So I'll be commenting on some of them, and others I think they're self-explanatory. Maybe if like it's more technical, then I'll put something on it. So the networks need to be loosely integrated with other independent microgrids. So like if it's a community and there are multiple communities, we can loosely connect the same microgrid, so that if something happens to one, they are still connected to the other microgrids, right? These microgrids have to harness heat and power, right, CHP, and they have to allow demand response, avoidance of transmission losses, like the loss of energy while you're trying to transmit power from one point to another, right? Like the current infrastructure has that certain problem. The integration of the RES is resilience to domino failures, which means that if one transformer fails, the others are also fail as well. You have to avoid that. If something destroys one part of the grid, it doesn't trigger a failure in other parts of the grid as well, right? They have to be independent. Empowerment of consumers and independent power producers to be proactive player and stakeholders in energy transmission. This means that the companies that currently own these utilities can't just be the only players in this new market that's going to arise from microgrids. They need to be new players. If like electricity is to be localized, as I said before, they need to be new players in the communities that they're designing these microgrids to actually be proactive with the development of these systems, right? The forecast of load and generation, understanding where this power or the sources of energy will come from for the next however many years that we are predicting or whatever, so that we are prepared for whatever happens. Introduction of several loads for inverters and converters. This is self-explanatory, of course. Introduction of distributed generation with DC output for numerous energy sources. I think this is more complex because most people don't understand the difference between AC and DC. It's more of like a technical term, but there's a way in which the DC produces more quality electricity to homes than AC, but we need to have both buses. There's a AC and DC communication that they use. If like you need more of this, as I said, comment and we'll discuss this with specialists. It's more technical than it sounds. Requirements for high quality power. This is also self-explanatory. The power that we've been using has really been declining, as first mentioned, with the problems that we have with the current grid that we're using. The reasons why we haven't reached this level of usage with microgrid system, as the University of Milwaukee had predicted for 2022, it's simple. I think politically it's hard to see microgrids working really, because people don't see the benefits or the profitability of replacing the current infrastructure that we're using with the old, right? Removing the macrogrids is the centralized grids that we're using. It's hard to see the benefits of removing them. So this might take a long time to implement and make them the primary agents of power supply. So it may take a while, but eventually, if like we reach some sort of level with our technology, hopefully it would get there. Even though I propose that electricity should be localized, internet and electricity should be localized, I think these utility companies will always view microgrids as like a threat. If we're talking in a large scale, they are correct that this is a threat to their profitability of things currently, and they affect other communities that won't be fortunate enough to own their own microgrids, right? So I propose that even if we create our own microgrids, we should still be connected to the main grid that everyone is using and pay a fixed amount for the maintenance of generation of power to the less fortunate communities. From where I am right now, I think the government and the municipality, if they want to utilize this type of technology and eventually implement it nationwide, right, they should start with communities such as mine that don't have these electricity infrastructure. Just figure out how to build this microgrid, and maybe the community collect money and pay for what they can somewhere, right? If like you utilize places like the rural areas or township without the infrastructure, I think maybe you can test things out and see how it affects or benefits the economy in such places. And if like there's surplus electricity, you can always move it from the microgrid to other places, right? We don't want a situation where it was like in Texas when they had blackouts and they couldn't get help from the federal government, since like they detached everything from the main grid. With the internet though, I think it's different, even though it should be localized, but it should be localized differently from all this electricity. I want to make the case that both electricity and internet should be localized. There's an argument, of course, that you can make that monopolies are good for the country or whatever, but like most people, if you say that on the internet, you'll get chastised. But this argument about localizing electricity and the internet is actually the argument against monopolies. So when I was working construction for Eskom, replacing all electricity line with these new 80 kV pipes, the thing that they warned us the most about was that we should be careful about fiber cables, right? So with these, they believed that the fiber cables were actually way more expensive than they were, and now we know that they were wrong. Like, fiber cable are as cheap as copper was, as we discussed at this point at the beginning of the video, right? So communities can easily own these internet cables. It allows the internet to be way cheaper. For example, there's a town in Northern Cape or Northwest, one of them north things, where they actually created their own internet grid. Since they own all this infrastructure for the internet, it allows them to buy this Wi-Fi for only 25 rands per month. It's uncapped. This is about, if you are outside of South Africa, this is about $2 in American. So this allows actually companies, local companies, to arise from the community to actually compete with these giant companies. If they are competing, it lessens the prices for these expensive ass bangles right now that we have, right? So monopoly, higher prices, but with too much competition, lower prices, because they compete so that they get more customers. So these companies need competition in the local level for them to decrease the prices of the internet. There's still this paper that I'm still waiting on. I actually requested it from the author, so I'll do a more longer video, as I said before, that details the technicalities about microgrids and this localization of the internet. You can go check it out and request it for yourself. Is localizing the internet in spite of communities. That's the name of the paper. You can find it on ResearchGate, right? So if you want that video, comment below and subscribe. Or if they finally send me that paper, I'll link it below or whatever, so that people can go read it. Giving internet access to kids that grew up, such as myself, without internet and electricity, giving them both at the same time, if they are localized, is giving them more opportunity to discover something that they enjoy outside of what they see. So if you grow up seeing like successful people as thugs or whatever, of course you want to be a thug, but if you have the internet, you have the access of the entire world, you eventually find something that you love and focus on that situation. The other people, even if they're outside of school anymore, they're no longer attending school, and maybe they didn't get the opportunity to go to university or colleges or whatever, they still have access to millions of courses on the internet to learn how to code, data science and everything, right? So we were lucky, I was lucky to actually get internet access earlier on in grade 11 or so, 11th grade. What's that in American? I think it's like sophomore or junior, I don't know, I always forget those names. But getting that internet access and the free tablet from school, free internet from school, and the tablet gave me access to physics documentaries, movies, YouTube videos and scientific papers that led me to pursue physics, right? That gave me the opportunity and see the opportunities in physics and other fields. Even if like they don't see the benefits in the economy soon, they'll see the benefits later on with these new generations with internet access. They will use it to gain new skills, and that will improve the economy.